What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on what if Deku was transported to SAO Part 3. Before we start off with anything else, I want to say thank you to Narukami for this artwork here of Izuku in, well, SAO. And I want to say thank you to all the people who joined my Discord as well. So, thank you to Zykor, The Loyalist, Ferocious28. Thank you all for joining. And if I accidentally pronounce your name wrong, which I expect I most likely am going to do a lot, I'm sorry in advance. I know that doesn't sound nearly as gavilant as I would like to pronounce it, but I do want to apologize in advance because I know I can definitely pronounce things wrong. So, we last left off. It just happened after Christmas. Izuku and Kirito both recovered over time and, well, were relatively keen on everything else they needed to do. They were preparing and constantly training. They were getting stronger by the day. Quite easily too. Izuku and Kirito eventually got the nicknames of the White Swordsman for for Deku tending to wear a white coat, while Kirito tends to wear a very black coat, giving him the nickname Black Swordsman. They both were pretty well known by most people. Then again, some people didn't know them as well. But if there was ever a need to call in either of the two, they would show up in relatively ease. They both decided that they would work to better themselves. They still stayed in the guild. Even though it was just the two of them, they decided that staying in that guild was a very important thing for them both. Eventually, they went to a meeting to discuss how to defeat the floor boss of the floor that they were currently on. During the meeting, Izuku saw that there was a girl. He almost didn't recognize her at first, but of course, after a little bit, and with Kirito's help, he recognized the girl to be Asuna, the one that they had known from a while back when they first started to go solo. Of course, this was kind of a shock to Izuku. He was surprised to see Asuna had changed so much, especially because him and Kirito both knew that Asuna was generally kind of a closed-in person. Or at least she's appeared to have been a closed-in person. But for what they could see, that seemed to have been not the case, and it seems that they were actually incorrect in their just reasoning. Izuku kept note of it to apologize at a later date and time. Of course, he wasn't actively gonna apologize right now. While he was sitting there, he heard a pretty bold claim that was made by Asuna herself. She stated that they were gonna use the NPCs to distract the boss and allow the boss to go on a rampage while attempting to kill it by other various means at the same time. Izuku hated this idea. For the pure fact of using someone else like a tool, he hated it. Even if they were non-playable characters, not even real humans, it didn't matter to Izuku. He still thought of them as such. And so, he hated the words that was coming out of her mouth. Before Izuku could even interject, Kirito had already beat him to the punch by interjecting and saying that they shouldn't do that. When Asuna questioned him why, he stated it was unethical for reasons to even think about putting lives of NPCs out there like that. Asuna then stated that they'll just respawn and that they're not even real humans, and that his words made no sense. But Kirito gave her a very strong look, showing that he wasn't joking around. She then asked if he had any better plans to solve the issue that they were facing. Kirito for a second almost bit his lip, trying to think of a way, but then Deku interjected. He stated that simply enough, the main objective was just to, at base, defeat the boss, correct? Asuna gave him the look like, are you really that dumb? Of course. So, Kirito and Deku both looked at each other. They both knew they had an active chance to actively try to defeat the boss, and the pure thought of it just coming down to them using, well, NPCs like that almost felt demeaning action, especially since they know that they lived in a world of heroes. Izuku didn't know much about what was going on in the outside world. He knew a little bit every now and then, but it wasn't enough to keep him caught up on every single event that was going on. He had heard about the UA Sports Festival and how it had gone off pretty well. Izuku sighed, reminding himself on how he originally wanted to, well, eventually become like that, be a hero. He knew there was still a chance. All he had to do was keep trying. And if he can't be a hero out there, then he'll definitely be a hero that helps save people in here. Izuku didn't know how truthful his words were. Granted, he didn't even know if he would actively put himself in danger to save someone else. But Izuku still believed that there was a decent chance that he would help, or at least do something to help out his friends, his comrades, his allies that were fighting on the front line. My bad, guys. I sneezed. He would be trying his hardest to help him out, no matter what the cause or action might be. Izuku got a determined look on his face as he then quickly made a decision that shocked almost everyone at the table. Izuku was really quiet at most of these meetings, but then again, he was known for being a quiet thinker among most people that didn't know him well enough to know that he was actually relatively talkative. So Izuku just randomly clearing his throat caused everyone to look at him. Izuku then stated, at base, what you're saying is that we should risk the lives of NPCs to still keep and pertain of the human playable people, correct? Asuna said that that was correct, which caused Izuku to almost shudder in the thought that people even thought that way. So he then looked Asuna dead in the eye and he said, so, you just decided that you are willing to sacrifice so many people, even if they're AI, they still feel that pain, that torture, all just for your selfish desire? This caused Asuna to almost stutter and stammer, but Kirito gave Izuku a approving nod, knowing that Izuku's words were relative truth. Even if they were NPCs, they were still people nonetheless. So Asuna asked him, well, what would you do, smart one? How would you solve this issue? Izuku sighed, and then calmly stated, the issue itself is not a problem. The boss himself I'll be able to identify and automatically know all of its weaknesses as soon as I see it, let alone even have to fight it. What we should most likely do is lure it outside of its area, but not towards the village. More akin towards a pass in between two sides. And then have multiple people using bow or archery style weapons up on the cliff tops to fire down at the boss while a few people keep it trapped in. Asuna was kind of shocked about Izuku's idea. It was definitely a plausible one, and very much likely wouldn't cause any issues for anything else. She sighed, knowing that, granted, while it was a little bit dangerous, it was still a pretty intelligent plan. She knew that she couldn't do anything to really stop Izuku as much, knowing that Izuku and Kirito were probably some of their best bets if they wanted anything to actually happen. So she just decided to let it pass for now, rather than actively trying to, fight against it. Izuku thanked her for this. He then decided that to continue with his plan would be a logical idea. He thought about it for a second, and then decided to state that the peer accessibility of this idea was very high, but it would also be very dangerous at the start. Izuku knew that he could easily go in there and remedy most of the issues that might be caused by it, but he also knew that other people might try to lead, especially Kirito. Seeing how he knew his friend a little bit better than most, to the point that Izuku most likely would even call Kirito a brother at this point. They were that close. He also knew Klein very well, too, so both of them were relatively well off in knowing each other. Izuku then said with a calm look on his face that the time was now, which caused everyone to be kind of confused until Izuku then stated, "The action is simple. The plan is simple. Everything is simple. What we need to do right now is take up the action of causing superior displacement," which confused most of the people there. So Izuku explained with a way better variation. He explained that the boss himself would need to get outside of the boss arena. Now this is doable, and they did have means to do it, or the idea of using civilians wouldn't even have come up. But he also knew, as doable it was also rather risky. He knew that he could most likely trust Kirito to, help him out in most case scenarios when it led to stuff like this. So he entrusted Kirito with the ability to guard everyone while he leads the monster out. Izuku was the one that needed to see it first, so Izuku could understand the basic makeup of the monster and all of its attack patterns and skills. Afterwards, he could lead into the gorge safely by understanding its skills. Izuku bought almost every single information he could find on the market about different skills and their capabilities. Most people called this a waste of time, but Izuku always did it. He did it for a majority of reasons, but one of his main reasons was that he knew that he couldn't just decide that some information was more important than others. So Izuku decided that finding out all information was important. He also knew about multiple different people. If they automatically joined a guild, he would automatically be informed. And if a person died, he would automatically be informed too. Izuku sighed at understanding all of this. He was a sword and shield user, his shield acting a very calm representation of his ability to, actively guard and defend the people he knows. So he decided it wasn't an issue to use this shield to help him secure his friends' and family's actions, especially Kirito, who was one of his closest friends. Asuna gave the plan a go, even though Izuku most likely would have enacted it if she didn't give it a go anyway. He really didn't care all that much about Asuna's ideas, just automatically knowing that she already decided that the best way to actually do anything was killing off the citizens that lived here, was already enough for Izuku to not relatively hate her, but come with a slight distrust in her, to keep it simple enough. He knew she didn't really mean it, but just the fact that she even mentioned it was cause enough that he knew he needed to keep a closer eye. So he decided to eventually chill. Same thing with everyone else. They all decided to chill. Well, some people decided to train, but him and Kirito chilled. Of course, as soon as Izuku saw Asuna coming, he quickly dashed out, giving a thumbs up to his bro before relatively leaving. Kirito knew Deku very well, so he knew that something must have happened for him to just relatively leave. But when he saw the ginger-haired girl walk up to him, Kirito realized very quickly that he had been duped. Sighing as he saw the girl walk up, of course, though, Izuku was watching from the background for a little bit until he decided to leave. He decided to train solo. He took up his blade and shield and constantly trained, fighting against monsters that were inside the dungeon itself. He knew he needed to map out the entire dungeon, understanding every little thing about it before making a planned attack was even possible or likely to succeed. Of course, after his plans and everything and searching, he was able to understand everything about the area. He knew that it was a relatively safe place to do the fight. Of course, this was with the caveat that it was also somewhat difficult to move in from time to time, but Izuku figured that wouldn't be too much of an issue for him, seeing how he could very simply just, fight to the max of his potential. Of course, most people would have laughed at him, but Izuku knew he hadn't really had to have a good, hard fight since his and Kirito's last duel, which happened about around 3 months ago. Izuku knew that him and Kirito both leveled up constantly. Their sleep schedule was in a mess because of it, just straight up. But they both also knew that they were stupidly strong because of it, outranking most people's even basic thought process of what the strongest strength could even mean. Izuku sighed, knowing that tomorrow was going to be quite a busy day for him. He looked around trying to see anything that was going on. He couldn't really see much, but then again he peeked over the corner and looked back at Kirito and Asuna. Asuna seemed to have fallen asleep, while Kirito was watching him. Izuku put his thumbs up, gesturing towards Kirito, and Kirito saw them. Kirito gave him a very, you douche look back at Izuku, but Izuku just laughed it off as he quickly ran. Kirito knew that Izuku was only just looking out for him, so he didn't find the action upsetting at all. He actually found his friend's action quite funny, even though he would never dare to admit it. Of course, over some time, Izuku kept training, and eventually, nightfall was about to happen. Izuku and Kirito met back up, as they discussed multiple different things. They ended up discussing, of course, this was after Kirito was hounded by Izuku about all the details that what happened between him and Asuna, which Kirito reluctantly shared to Izuku, knowing that Izuku was most likely going to make fun of him if he didn't. Izuku gave a laughing acknowledgement and commended his friend on a job well done. This caused Kirito to kind of smirk as well, knowing that Izuku did already know that Asuna was coming and that he just decided to, well, let his friend experience something very special. This caused Izuku to laugh even more. Eventually, the two friends decided to eat a feast. It was a pretty decent-sized one. Then again, it almost had become a tradition for them. Anytime after something big would happen, they would tend to eat a pretty large dinner. Mainly just because the two of them knew that they both were kind of big eaters from time to time. And both enjoyed each other's company when they wanted to hang out, of course. Then again, with everyone else that was there, them hanging out was probably the most likely thing to do. Of course, no one honestly knew Izuku or Kirito. They only knew that Izuku and Kirito both were, well, to give it in the best light, very strong people, and could probably do a lot of damage on their own. Of course, Izuku and Kirito both knew that action itself wasn't incorrect, but that neither of them were actively going to take such an action. They found taking such an action to be slightly upsetting. Hurting other people was never in either one of their bios. They both didn't even like the thought of it, much rather actually acting upon it. So they both decided against it for obvious reasons. Izuku decided to turn in for night. As he stared up at his ceiling, he wondered what his mom was doing, and he wondered what the people on the outside world thought about this situation, as he closed his eyes and gently drifted off to sleep. Well, that's where I'm going to leave this off, guys. If you liked it, hit the like button, and if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. And until next time, goodbye.